She got off the school bus like any other day. Backpack on. 7th grade. 13 years old. And somewhere between that bus stop and home, Ziyah Harris simply vanished. No argument. No runaway history. No warning signs her family could see coming. She was there one moment and gone the next. But here is what makes this case so disturbing. The person responsible was not a stranger lurking in the shadows. He was already inside the house, already at the dinner table, already trusted, and the system that was supposed to protect her, it had been warned, more than once. Stay with me, because this story is about to go places that will genuinely shake you. Before we go any further, if you believe that stories like Ziyah's deserve to be heard, if you think the world should know her name, please take 5 seconds right now. Like this video. Subscribe to Mystora Crimes. Hit that bell so you never miss another case. These families fight so hard to keep these stories alive. The least we can do is make sure the world is listening.
Breaking news from CBS News Detroit.
Breaking news at noon, the man convicted of murdering 13-year-old Ziyah Harris was found dead in his prison cell this morning.
Now let's get into it. Ziyah Harris was a 7th grader at J. Clark Preparatory Academy in Detroit, Michigan. By every account from the people who knew her, she was a normal 13-year-old navigating school, friendships, and life. She lived with her adoptive mother, who was also her biological grandmother, a woman who loved her deeply and described her as a child who never ran away, never skipped school, never caused the kind of trouble that would make anyone expect something like this. She was not a child who disappeared into chaos. She was a child who disappeared from stability. That distinction matters enormously in how we understand what happened to her. Now, you need to understand the family dynamic here, because it is central to everything. There was a man named Jarvis Butts. He was not a random person in Ziyah's life. He had children with her aunt. He moved within the family's orbit regularly. He was familiar. He was comfortable. And for a predator, that kind of access is everything. Investigators believe the grooming. The process of slowly, deliberately manipulating a child into a position of trust and vulnerability began as far back as June 2022. That is nearly 2 years before Ziyah disappeared. 2 years of calculated behavior, while everyone around him had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. Or did they? Because here is where this case starts to crack open in a deeply uncomfortable way. Butts had been named in at least 5 Child Protective Services complaints since 2015. 5. One of those complaints, filed in 2022, specifically named Ziyah. It stated clearly that she had reported being touched inappropriately by him. 5 complaints, one involving the very child who would later go missing, and nothing was ever substantiated. Let that sit with you for a moment. We will come back to it. There is something psychologists call the trusted adult paradox. It describes a devastating reality that children are statistically far more likely to be harmed by someone they know and trust than by a stranger. And when that person is woven into the fabric of family life, present at holidays, known by the grandparents, trusted with childcare, it creates a wall of disbelief that can protect a predator for years. Jarvis Butts understood that wall. Whether consciously or not, he used it. Before we go any further in the timeline, we need to talk about his background, because this is not a man who had a clean record and then suddenly snapped. Butts was a registered sex offender. He had spent more than 8 years in prison for third-degree criminal sexual conduct before any of this took place. That information was not hidden. It was on a public registry. And yet here he was, embedded in a family, having children with a family member, with ongoing access to children, including a 13-year-old girl. How does that happen? That is not a rhetorical question. That is a question every single person involved in this case should be forced to answer out loud. By late 2023, the situation had escalated in a way that appears to have set a dark chain of events into motion. In September that year, Ziyah told Butts she had missed her period. She was 13 years old. And what did he do with that information? He started searching online. Investigators would later recover search histories from his devices, showing queries about abortions, abortion pills, and disturbingly, about the effects of drinking antifreeze. He was not searching out of love or concern. He was searching for a way out of getting caught. Think about the psychology of that moment. A grown man, a man who already knew his past was on record, who was already facing a separate gun charge, who had already been flagged by CPS multiple times, suddenly facing the possibility that a pregnancy would expose everything. The pressure building, the desperation mounting. Behavioral analysts would describe this as a critical escalation point, when a predator who had been carefully managing their exposure suddenly feels the walls closing in. The risk of extreme action increases significantly. It does not mean the outcome is inevitable, but the pattern of his searches, the timing, the secrecy, it paints a picture of a man who was calculating his next move. And Ziyah had no idea. On January 9th, 2024, she went to school. She used her school-issued tablet to send messages that day. Messages investigators say were directed to a device connected to Butts, confirming they would meet after school. She got off the bus near Cornwall and 3 Mile Drive in Detroit, and she never came home. Her mother started searching for her at 6 p.m. She didn't call police until the following morning. One night, that was all the time that passed, and the trail was already going cold. When police eventually got involved, the investigation hit early walls. The Detroit Public Schools Community District looked into the case first, hit a roadblock, and didn't hand it over to the Detroit Police Department until February 14th, 2024, more than a month after Ziyah disappeared. Officers sat down with Jarvis, but the very next day. What did he tell them? He said he barely knew her, said she occasionally did odd jobs at his auto repair shop, denied seeing her on January 9th. All of that was a lie. Cell phone data, surveillance footage, and digital records would eventually piece together a very different picture of that day. After getting off the bus, Ziyah met with Butts. They went to the shop. Then they drove roughly 40 minutes out to Ypsilanti, Michigan. Then they came back. Then they checked into a motel. That motel was the last confirmed location where Ziyah Harris was seen alive. Now, investigators did not find her body, but they found things that told a story. Near the intersection of 7 Mile and Berg Road in Detroit, police recovered a pink jumpsuit that had been turned inside out, a black jacket, and a single red and black shoe. A black hoodie recovered in the area tested positive for the DNA of both Ziyah and Jarvis Butts. And cell tower records placed Butts in that exact area between 11:40 p.m. on January 10th and 1:34 a.m. on January 11th, the night after she vanished. He was not home. He was not at his shop. He was at the water's edge. Investigators believe he disposed of her remains in the Rouge River. Butts himself would later, as part of a plea agreement, admit to dumping her body there. Searches were conducted. Divers went in. But the river, with its currents and depth, gave nothing back. Her father, Mavin Jennings, spent months searching for his daughter himself, combing through abandoned buildings, pushing through overgrown fields, refusing to stop looking. The physical and emotional toll of that search consumed him. He became ill, and he died before his daughter was ever found. A father who lost his child, and then lost his own life searching for her. There are no words for that. Meanwhile, Butts was quietly navigating his own legal problems. In addition to everything connected to Ziyah, he had been scheduled to turn himself in on a separate gun charge on the very same day she disappeared, January 9th. That date had been pushed back to February. Is that a coincidence? Law enforcement certainly had questions about the timing. By September 2024, Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy announced charges against Butts. The original charges were severe: first-degree premeditated murder, child sexually abusive commercial activity, and multiple counts related to the assaults of multiple children. And then, just before trial, everything shifted. February 12, 2026. Less than 2 weeks before his trial was set to begin, Jarvis Butts walked into a courtroom and entered guilty pleas across 6 separate cases. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in the death of Ziyah Harris. He was sentenced to 35 to 60 years in prison. He also pleaded guilty to 5 counts of criminal sexual conduct involving 5 other children, girls as young as 4 years old. Those victims were not strangers to him either. They were all connected to his world, his circle, the families he had inserted himself into: a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, 2 children aged 8, and a 13-year-old. The prosecution had built a case that revealed the full scope of what Butts had been doing for years. This was not one act of violence. This was a sustained pattern of predatory behavior that had gone unchecked across multiple homes, multiple families, and multiple failures of the child protection system. As part of the plea agreement, Butts agreed to provide a truthful statement about where Ziyah's body was. For the family, that was a thread of hope they had been holding onto, the possibility that they could finally bring her home. The sentencing took place on March 12, 2026. Ziyah's grandmother, her Aunt Marquetta, 3 of the other survivors, and Butts' own sister all gave statements that day. Marquetta Harris stood in front of the man who had taken her niece and told him directly, "You are a serial habitual predator." She said she would never get to hold Ziyah again, never get that chance back. The pain in that room was immeasurable. Ziyah's father could not be there. He was already gone, but barely looked up. And then, on March 26, 2026, just 14 days after that sentencing, Jarvis Butts was found dead in his prison cell. The Michigan Department of Corrections reported it as a suicide. Staff attempted to save him. They couldn't. He took the full truth with him. The agreement he had signed, the one that was supposed to lead authorities to Ziyah, died with him. The Detroit Police Department issued a statement saying they would continue following every lead to locate her remains. But the family now faces the very real possibility that they will never have a burial, never have a place to go and grieve, never have the finality that every family deserves. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about this genuinely. When a child is named in a CPS complaint, specifically named at 13 years old, and that complaint is never substantiated, and that child later goes missing and is found to have been a victim of ongoing abuse, who is responsible for that gap? Is it the caseworkers, the system design, the community that trusted the wrong person, all of the above? And what does it say about how we value the safety of children when warning signs as clear can simply disappear into paperwork? Ziyah Harris deserved better. Her father deserved to find her. Her grandmother deserved answers. And the only person who had them chose, in the end, to say nothing. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you think the system failed Ziyah the most. Tell me what you think should change. These conversations matter because they reach people who make decisions, lawmakers, caseworkers, parents, community members. If this story moved you, if you believe Ziyah's name should live on, please subscribe to Mystora Crimes, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every share is another person who learns her name. And right now, that is one of the most powerful things any of us can do. Her name was Ziyah Harris. She was 13 years old, and she deserved so much more than what this world gave her. Mystora Crimes, where secrets, justice, and humanity collide.